So I'm going to continue our program from yesterday. Yesterday we learned how to create widgets, and hopefully you played around with some of the layouts. But where we left off yesterday, if I run this program, it creates a button called Press Me, and then immediately puts another button which is called Save Switch right on top of it. So now what we want to do is we want to set it up so that our buttons don't end up right on top of another. And to do that, what we're going to have to do is set a layout. And so there's multiple different types of layouts that we can use. First one I'm going to say is a grid layout. So I'm going to set the layout for my main screen. Dot set layout. And then right inside here I'm going to say new grid layout 2x2. And I'm going to have to add an import for grid layout. But you'll notice now when I run my program, I've got a grid layout set out, so it's going to do rows and columns. So I've got my buttons appearing on screen together. Now if I create a third button, now you'll notice I have my buttons appearing, all three of them on the same screen in my 2x2 layout. Now I leave it to you to play with some of the other layouts that you have available to you, like the flow layout, the null layout. But what I wanted to revisit was last time I said everything inside Java was a container when we're talking about widgets. So we got our main screen container, which right now contains other buttons in that grid layout. But we can actually add levels of layers to it. We can add a container inside a container, kind of like you stack those plastic containers that you can pick up inside of each other. We can stack smaller containers inside of bigger containers, and that's what we're going to do today. So first thing is I'm going to create a new container. And then in this inside container, what I'm going to do is set the layout to the flow layout. I'm going to have to add a import for flow layout. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to add some other widgets to that inside container. So what I'm going to do and I'm going to remove those two from the main container. And now instead of adding those buttons separately into the main container, I'm going to add them together by saying main screen dot add So what I've done is I've created a smaller container which has two of the buttons that we created before, and I'm adding that to our main screen container. So if I run my program, let's see what our new improved layout looks like. So you see, because flow layout does 1 and 2, we've only got two of our 2x2 grid. I've got Press Me and Sasevich available to click, and then the button 3 as separate in the main container. So this is actually this is the inside container containing two buttons, and this one is on the main container, and the main container contains all of this. Now, one thing that we didn't talk about when we talked about creating our widgets is we can actually set them to be enabled or disabled at the start. And there's various reasons why you may want a button to be enabled or disabled right at the start. I'm sure you can think of several, and we can do that with any of our widgets. So if I run it, you'll notice now the press me button is disabled right at the start. I can click on the other ones because by default it starts as enabled. So I could disable those. If I did that with the text field, and I'll add it to my main screen container. See, I have a text field right here. That's set in. Actually, I'll add it to see, I can type in my text field, but if I decide that by default I don't want them to be able to type in my text field, set that to false, and you notice I can't click on it, I can't type in that field until maybe something happens, maybe they have to click on this button to enable that field. A couple other, you can do set visible as well, which I think you can guess. So that field still exists there, is there, it's in memory, but it's just not displaying on screen because we set visible to false. You might also want to play around with set size, um, set text on text fields. And actually the challenge today is just to play around with some of the properties, look at the API for widgets, buttons, text fields, checkboxes, and see what other cool things that you can do with them.